Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Jones. I'm just welcoming my friend Keith Jones, no relation, as he would say, but we're just here to talk a little bit about Keith's journey in entrepreneurship and just to give you a little bit of background. And I know Keith, you're gonna jump in more, but Keith is an entrepreneur that's had a pretty interesting journey through the corporate world and then into his own enterprise as well. But he's had experience working with some bigger organizations like Maple Leaf Sports, the Olympics, Rogers Communications, and others. And then, you know, had a key pivot in his journey, and then got into his own entrepreneurial journey with a different kind of mindset. So welcome to the podcast, Keith. It's awesome to have you, and I know we've had lots of conversations in the past, but there's lots of interesting tidbits that we want to share with our listeners. And but maybe if you could jump in and kind of tell us a little bit about your journey, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me, and I appreciate you taking the time to have this chat today. As far as the journey goes, how much time do you have? How far back do you want to go?
Yeah.
I've told this story a few times before, but I always like to kind of talk about, or just even plant the seed of my upbringing and having a mom who was a nurse in the ER and the OR, and also part of that movement where this transition from homemaker into having her own career, right? And she'd work a tremendous amount of time and hours, and come home and raise four kids, right? And so having that as a role model was a really impactful thing for me. My other role model was my dad, and he was a farmer, right? And it is true, the jack of all trades, like work your ass. Probably I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast, but work your ass off and as hard as 7 to 7, and then you're watching my dad just build and make just about anything, right? Like, hey, if something's broken, you don't call a mechanic. You get out the torches, you look at the scrap metal pile, and you fix it, right? And so I think setting yourself up as a journey, from me seeing that just from like DNA from the beginning, right? Your nature nurture combination is like, that's what you're born with, and that's what you see growing up. So I think that's been foundational to who I am as a person and who I am today, I guess. And then my journey is after that, I'll jump through, but I've always been a creative dude and just building and making, creating things, and started off as art in school, but then I turned into making cars or building furniture. And my friends would go party on the weekend in college, and I'd be like, I'm going to go build a table. And, IKEA is too expensive. So I'm going to the lumber shop and buying some pine and finding some scrap metal and making my own tables for college kind of thing. So yeah, that journey has taken me from a little farm kid to design school, and two design schools, and working out really the essence and core ideas of what design is, and building logos to building brands to building million square foot workspaces, the graphics for them, to I guess to bigger highlights of doing a TEDx talk on creativity and how to design a better future. So yeah, in a condensed, very condensed space there. That's kind of
Yeah,
mini.
we'll get into some of the details on that, but I know that you made a pretty significant pivot in your life and in your career, leaving the relative, I say safety, is as much of a grind as it is in corporate life, but as a senior person in a major brand, deciding to give that all up and kind of move into what was more meaningful to you. But maybe you can share kind of what that moment was and why that happened and what you got into from there.
Yeah, that's a bigger question too. I think
Yeah.
it was a compounding decision. I think it's
Yeah.
like some of those experiences, previous to me jumping ship. I do some volunteer work and helping out different spaces. I had two nephews that were born, and then you know thinking about it before that even. I was in a motorcycle accident, and all of a sudden I'm cruising downtown Toronto, and a truck pulls in front of me, and next thing you know, I'm staring at the bumper of a Dodge Durango with a doctor who was rushing to get to the hospital, and My motorcycle is 50 feet away, laying on the street with the handlebars ripped
Wow.
off, and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, a foot lower, I'd probably be right. The
Yeah.
head would have been flipped backwards, or I wouldn't be able to do a lot of things. So I always I take stock in signs, and I'm not sure that was one, but reflecting on it, I think I'm kind of reflecting on it right now. That definitely was
Yeah.
one of the things. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then the combination of that, I think reflection in the periods and those little elements that you kind of experience through life give you signs. You're always given little signs, and it's our job to to listen to those signs. And a lot of times we don't listen to them. We just keep heads down, go to work, do our thing, right? And whereas I'm a pretty intuitive person, so I'm always
Yeah.
listening. And it's weird because it's part of my job, but it's also me listening to it. And then the second stage would have been, I think, reaching milestones too. Would have been, working my way up the corporate ladder, right? Working, doing design, do identity packages for organizations, then you start building brand packages, then you're like launching the NHL with Rogers and this bigger package. And
Mm.
then we did a rebrand for Rogers, which is like a $35 million cap investment. We're doing like 600 retail stores of what does the digital signage look like? What's the back of cash look like? What do little name cards look like? So all of these pieces in retail stores across the country. And then we worked on my love and passion for space and architecture came with branding when we did Share Space, which was the largest office transformation program in Canadian history. And all of a sudden, this project is laying on my lap, and I say it's me, but it's we. It was every time it was a team and amazing people that I got to work with along the way. But we were building like whole new office spaces, like the WeWork of corporate world, 10 years ago. So we're ahead of the time, but we're doing these really amazing, huge projects. And then I got to this point where, okay, you did this thing, you did this thing, you did this thing, and what's next is not a creative director, but a director of creative services. So it would have been overseeing and managing like 60 people, maybe 70 people in house in that department. And I thought, do I want to manage a bunch of finicky creative people? I'm a finicky creative person. I don't want to manage 60 of me. No way. So that didn't sound
Yeah.
too, it's appealing. And like I could probably do it. It'd be a great career advancement and a great opportunity, but I'm also just selling widgets, right? I'm also
Right.
just selling internet, which is not a bad thing. I'm super appreciative of all the opportunities I had working with Rogers and all the great work we did and all the great people we met and the output of that and the learning. Like it's like you can't measure that, right?
Yeah.
But there's something inside me. There's that little voice inside me, that little seed I talked about before, saying, "All right, there's something bigger here. There's something you need to do before you die. There's something that's calling you to do something more." And at the same point, I guess there would be a third item in our bucket list of three the things that are motivating us. Uh, Earlier that year, Donald Trump was voted in power. This dichotomy of red versus blue, whoever you vote for, I don't care. But it was just like the polarization of politics. Australia was on fire. This massive forest fire. The last 20 years were like the hottest on record. Like pollution. Let's not talk about climate change. Let's talk about pollution, right? And so that mixed with having two nephews, having like these life affirming moments was like, what's next? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? Right? So you kind of have to, at a certain point in our lives, we have to. And it was also late 30s, coming up in 40. Wait, what's that milestone? Like, what happens in your 40s? What do you do? Right? And so yeah, I
Yeah.
think those are. I don't know if I answered your question or I just
Yeah.
rambled, but
I, no, it's funny. Near death experience is often a trigger for I gotta change what I'm doing. So that's an interesting uh, point. But I think your journey to leave that corporate space. A lot of people can't do that. What I've seen is a lot of people get locked into um, those milestones that you talked about, those next steps, and always trying to get up that ladder a little bit more. And it's interesting to see that. And I see it in entrepreneurship as well. Um, and somebody told me not too long ago, and maybe it was you, who said you gotta have a lot of entrepreneurs have a mind like a goldfish, to quote Ted Lasso, but saying, you do this thing and then immediately you say, well, what's next? And you kind of have to. It's almost like that dopamine rush of success. Like you achieve something and then you need another fix. you need to keep going. So it's interesting that you mentioned that climbing of the corporate ladder piece. But as you moved out of that, I know you left that, and you and your wife are both creatives, and you started Brand Van. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of what Brand Van is, but maybe you can jump into that transition, coming from that big corporate and dealing with those large office space transformations, those sort of things, to all of a sudden starting a Brand Van. Maybe you can explain what Brand Van is and what you did with it.
Yeah. It's kind of like, um, basically, I guess the first phase, the transition after Rogers was me taking a sabbatical, me taking some time off to go, what is my purpose here, and what does the world need, and how can I make impact? How can I make impact with my skill set? What's my genius? What's my super talent? Like I'm shit at taxes. I can't pay my taxes. I'm like I struggle to get in time every year, right?
Yeah.
But creativity is my superpower, right? My ability to create new things, and this brand and design thing is another little superpower. So I said, how can I make the world better with that skill set? What is it that I have that I can make accomplish while I am here, and what does the world need? And so I kind of like I ended up building, it sounds weird, but I built a strategy for life. I'm like, what is the purpose of all our lives here, and what's the purpose of my life here? And so from that came me starting this agency as an idea design consultancy. Like we're use creativity to solve bigger problems and partner with organizations that need things solved, and help them along their way using kind of brand and innovation design. And I said, well, if we're a creative company and we're making the world better, let's go fucking make the world better. Pardon my swear, but how do we make the world better, right? Go do it, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of people just talk about it, and a lot of people start the big multimedia or multi-million dollar agency, and then they'll give the one day a year back to a charity. And I'm like, that's nothing's going to get solved by that.
Right.
So I said to my partner Vicky, I said, hey, well, I'm thinking about this thing, and we had these conversations, and all of a sudden we're gonna drive across Canada and help charities. How do we make Canada a better place? Canada's a freaking amazing country, but it needs some help. Um, how do we make Canada a better place? And let's drive across Canada and help out charities and nonprofits. And then it turned into, well, we could volunteer to a soup kitchen, or we can give a brand design system to a soup kitchen so that they can help market themselves and promote themselves and get better funding and get sponsorship opportunities. And so we just bought a van. It's Trades van. It's an empty shell of a van, and we built out a really cool interior design component of it. I told my builder who helped me before. I said, hey, I want to build a van. And he's like, go fly a kite. And I had to build out schematics and designs before I even owned the van. I'm trying to persuade him to do this. So yeah, in the summer we ended up building out the interior design of this van, a work live space, and then in September we drove to the east coast of Canada and met charities and nonprofits along the way, and in October we drove to the west coast of Canada and met charities and nonprofits along the way, and we gave advice, and then we started doing brand work with them, and then the concept shaped into crowdsourcing. So how do we, instead of we heard crowdfunding before, where you fund an idea, and which I probably should have done because I took all my money and borrowed some money from the bank to get this project off the ground. But it was crowdsourcing to get the job done. It was all about outcomes, right? And so we crowdsource these super amazing, talented people, whether it's copywriters or animators or web developers. Like, how do we use our skill sets to not sell a widget or a cable package? Which again, love it, Rogers, you're an amazing company, but it was like, this can actually move the needle for people that are hungry, or people that need a house, or some of that stuff, and also that awareness tool too, right? And we're giving away confidence to the leaders of those organizations, so they can put a badge on their t-shirt, be confident that they're pitching and selling and have the right tools and marketing tools, and pride for the people that are working there and volunteering there, because a lot of times charities have just kind of crap brand, right? And so let's have the people and the volunteers go, wow, I want a SAC t-shirt. I want a Forrester reading t-shirt. Make cool merch. Make the brand exciting and accessible and interesting. And then dignity would be the last component. Like, the people that are getting services there, what we view charity as, well, it's charity, so let's just give them the trash. Let's give them the leftover. Let's give them the scraps, right? And it's like, no, like, if I'm doing something for a charity, it has to be as good, if not better, than the Fortune 500 companies that I do brand work for. Like, they're humans. We're humans. We all want the same thing. They just happen to have a couple hurdles to get there. They didn't have a nurse and a farmer for parents, and who happened to get lucky and survive through shitty times. They fell down during shitty times. So we're all human, right? And so that was like the confidence, pride, and dignity were really three key elements for that experience.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've worked with a lot of these charities and not for profits across the country, and you're exactly right. They don't necessarily have the same tools in their toolbox as bigger companies, but it the work that they're doing impacts society in general, um, and to help uplift those organizations to achieve more and do more, the impact of that is tremendous. So it's pretty amazing. The challenge, of course, is you spent all your own money to get this off the ground, which is sometimes challenging, but it kind of turned into And Good Company, your current company, and this crowdsourcing model is interesting, that you can utilize this skill set of a variety of creatives around the country or around the world to solve some of these challenges. And what's interesting about that is that you're actually able to leverage some of the beliefs and values of those creatives to connect them to those not for profits and stuff. So it's kind of an interesting web you've created here, that could be a model for other businesses. So it's like, how do you capture those creatives? Like, how do you reach out? Because I assume they're distributed globally in some cases. How do you build that team, and how do you inspire that team to participate?
Yeah, I think there's, to answer your question in a couple different ways. One would be, we didn't have as far reach as we could have, mainly because it was all on a shoestring, right? So imagine we
Right.
had $1 million to help build that campaign and tell people about what we're doing, and then a system to like impact larger groups on a larger scale to like get back. So the awareness is literally, it was Vicky, my partner Vicky, who's freaking amazing, and she's in the world of marketing and digital marketing, and she's the smart one in the relationship, and her network and me and my network, and that's kind of how it all started. It was just like, hey, let's tell
Yeah.
some people. We did a couple posts, and we're not. It sounds weird, but we're not social media. We're on social media, but we're not like people. Some people are beat the drum and build their audience, build their brand, whereas I'm a doer and a builder and a maker. But it was literally through conversations. It was through us telling our friends, and I had a couple friends that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this thing. He's like, how can I help? And I remember the conversation I had with him, and it was the friend I wasn't expecting to jump on board, but he's like, tell me what I need to do. He works in the web world. He's like, whatever I can do, I can do. And this was Mark, and he built the digital side of the Bumrun charity that we did, which is a pretty
Right.
funny project. But he's just like,
Yeah.
so many of those friends just said, how can I help? What can I do? And his perspective was, and some people wanted to help because they saw the need, and they knew that there was something calling them to do more than just work for the corporation to make money, to get their paycheck. Like there's a calling. People wanted it, right? They wanted it as much as I did. Maybe not as much as I did because they didn't quit the job, but they wanted it.
Yeah.
And then there's another group of people like Mark, who I just mentioned. He was like, no, because people say they're going to do something and they don't do it. Where Jonesy, you're fucking doing it, right? He's like, I want to help because you're doing it, right? And so there's like, which fueled me, which fueled my energy. It's not like people go, oh yeah, cheering you on, and some people cheered and said I'm going to help and didn't show up when I reached out, right? And that's just people that get busy, and there's time on it. They have other life things going on, or maybe they get excited about an idea and don't show up. And so I try not to. At first, I was a little perturbed by those friends that offered that didn't show up, and then I was like, everybody's busy. Everybody's got their own life, their own thing on the go. But
Yeah.
then, and then other people would just tell their friends or repost things, and next
Yeah.
thing you know, people are showing up. It was really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's a real grassroots type of model, but I think it says a lot about your leadership is, and I think you made an interesting point, is that you were demonstrating uh, what it is, how you wanted to change the world. And I find leaders that do that inspire other leaders, and other leaders want to get involved. And clearly that's what's happening with this grassroots kind of expansion of what, what you're doing. So, giving back to the world instead of being always driven by economic outcomes. That's that's kind of the model that's interesting to me, is that you can do both. You can create economic opportunity for yourself, but you can also do good in the world, and whether that's in sustainability projects or just uplifting the people around you is very inspiring to me. But I think to a lot of people, they want to be part of those things. So it speaks a lot to the leadership qualities that you're bringing out. And I think we have a lot of young leaders emerging, and young entrepreneurs starting out. What advice do you think you would give a young entrepreneur or leader trying to make an impact in the world? Like, what's your advice looking back at your journey, that would have made you do this pivot, or would have changed the way you work through your path? You may not have changed anything, but I think a lot of our younger leaders maybe aren't jumping into spaces like this. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think for me, certain things I would say I would change it completely. And other things, times I might just say I wouldn't change a thing, because every missed note, or every failure is an opportunity to learn from it too, right? And I'm, if you want to get woo woo, I can actually say that, the world has a plan for you, or the universe provides, but you must show up. And
Right.
I've got a note on my door here, and it says, I got lots of notes all over my office, but
Yeah.
one on the board says, be in the space doing, be in space doing. So whatever that is, and this kind of echoes to a conversation we had the other day as well too, Doug, or with the group, but
Yeah.
um, be in the space doing. So things aren't going to happen if you're at home on your phone. If you're just sitting there
Yeah.
staring at a thing, things aren't going to happen unless you're out doing something. So every action gets a reaction, and that reaction will get you a further step down the line. And it may be a failure component, or it may be hey, brand van is, wow, you gave everything away, it's not sustainable. But then it pivots over to this thing over here, where this thing is sustainable and this thing is driving you. Or, wow, you really decided that it's helping people, but I really like helping people, and I want to solve the housing crisis that's here. Let me dive down that pathway, right? And I remember listening to David Suzuki a few years ago, and one of the students in the audience raised their hands, a younger person. It was like, it's overwhelming. It's like, the world is in crisis. There's this, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's all of these things, right? And he had all these issues that he was flagging with David. He's like, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. And David was like, no, well, to be honest with you, the world is kind of screwed, right? And you can't fix it all, but you can fix one thing. So you can make one decision to fix one thing and focus on one thing. So I think you can get focused on whatever that thing is, and figure out how to take some action. So indirectly, I'm saying take an action and get focused in on something, because it might not be the thing, but it'll get you further, right? It'll get you going.
Yeah. I think that's solid advice, is that action is the key. Take, and even if it's small. um, I had this conversation with my kids over the last little while. I mean, their world is different than our world growing up, and it can be overwhelming, as you said. And I use the analogy, and both of us grew up in hockey. I use the analogy of, well, you can't turtle. You
Mm-hmm.
can't just hide inside your shell and let it happen. You need to take some sort of action,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially on things that are passionate or meaningful to use. So I think that's a good analogy. So Keith, I just wanted to circle back on Bumrun because this is something that you and I have talked about before, and it's a pretty interesting project that you're involved in. So maybe you can highlight what that was and what the branding, because it's a really fun and innovative way that you presented this around a very serious topic. So maybe give our listeners a bit of an overview of what that was.
Yeah. I guess first I'll set a note about what Bum Run is, it's a 5K run to raise awareness for colon cancer, and colon cancer actually happens to be the second leading cause of death by cancer in Canada. So pretty big issue. And Ian reached out to us. He's the guy who championed and started the Bum Run, and he had some pretty crappy creative, no pun intended. But he we got together, and a few of my friends that were working on this project, we kind of just started jamming on it. And I've got a friend of mine, one of my best friends, Ryan Taylor. He's got a little more potty humor, and we came up with the idea of really making a joke about it all, or really breaking down the stigma by like adding comedic relief to the situation. And obviously the symbolism and the imagery and the language around butt cheeks. It's my 4-year-old son is he's already saying butt jokes, right? He's into that world. And so how do we make it fun and interesting? And there's a typical view of what charities should be, and charities have to be this really I don't want to say dark, but really serious thing, and really empathetic towards the cause, and this negative perspective on what a charity could be, or lack of something exciting and fun. And we thought, well, how do you get people talking about butts? Like, let's just make it funny, make it hilarious, and make it a joke. So we had some great copywriters that joined us, and Mark helped build the website, and Ariane did some really interesting fun lines. And so it's like literally the logo is the CN Tower up the butt cheeks, right? It's like put it in your face and really talk about it a little bit more, and put it out there so people go, whoa, this is a serious thing, but you're no avoiding it. It's no like, well, this thing you got to do. It's like, let's get people talking about it. Let's get people having conversation around it. And we had this amazing animator, I think I mentioned before, but this amazing animator from France. I reached out to him on Instagram. Hey man, you want to help with this? He's like, sure. I only have a limited amount of time, but it's a really good cause, and let's do something really, really great for it. And even the animation, low budget, low quality. Not I would say low quality. It's high quality, but it was done in a quick amount of time, and it tells a story, and it brings the whole thing full circle. So yeah, it's if you have a chance to go for the run, or just check out some of the marketing material, because it's fun, and it just shows you take it from a different angle, you get a different output on it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a very Canadian way you approach that design work and things. And Canadians are typically very good at poking fun at ourselves, and to take a very serious topic like colon cancer and make it fun and inviting, and it kind of builds community, which is kind of the goal, I guess, in branding, and so amazing job. I would encourage everybody to check that out. It it's also that power of community and bringing in those people from different countries, different places in the world, and bringing in their expertise around it, because colon cancer doesn't just exist in Canada. It exists everywhere, and I think everybody has a touch point with things like this. So it's cool that you can use your superpowers to do good, I guess. So kind of what's next for And Good Company for you? Like, where are you going with the company? Are you continuing to expand and do new and interesting projects?
Yeah. We got a lot of projects in the go right now. I guess two of the most kind of leaning more into as much social impact stuff as I can, while also taking on some the Fortune 500 clients that help pay the bills as well. Like we did a big
Yeah.
couple of big photo shoots over the past couple of years with Espresso, who has recently become a B Corp, which is, if the audience doesn't know, benefit corp, which is kind of like, hey, let's go make money and let's go do good things in the world and have some checks and balances in there. And I actually think that's the future of all organizations, are social impact organizations. Where you're helping people, planet, and profit. And I
Yeah.
think that's the metrics for the future of every company. And if you're not jumping on that now, you should be, because I think that's what the next generation of kids want. And talk about looking at different jobs and different opportunities. If you can figure out that metrics, and if you're going to start something new, how do you balance all of those things? For us as an organization right now, the other thing we're working on is Autism 101, which is like the language and the narrative around autism is totally changing and shaping into less of a disability, more of just a difference. And we're working on a series of animated videos and content pillars and pieces just to teach the general public what autism is. And so we're working on that for an autism center in Scarborough, which is, I started working on them like 6 years ago when they got the first building, and now they've blown up to 3 different locations. They're doing a musical this weekend, and they're getting funding to do interesting things like teach people about what autism is. So not only are they helping support people, but like supporting the greater group of Canadians and even internationally. We're hoping to translate it into different languages as well, like Tamil and Urdu and English, and maybe start to get into some different languages beyond that. Wow. That's the first one. Yeah. And the other one I'm working on, actually, I got to start it soon, is we're building a website for a group I helped brand last year called Quest. And it's STEM learning in a hybrid environment. So it's basically an attachment to public school or public and private school that need to have STEM learning built into their curriculum. And we're helping them build the website for it, some of the marketing material around that, and kind of communication collateral that would go along with that as well too. So it's super interesting that you could get STEM learning for your classroom out of a Silicon Valley company that's just kind of created this digital portal for resources and learning. So it's really cool.
Wow. Yeah. It's amazing. It's that combination of economic opportunity with doing good in the world, which is tremendous. And it comes back to that, I like to hike and spend time in the woods, and it's always about do no harm or leave nothing behind sort of thing. But yours is about leaving legacy behind and impact behind, which is very interesting to me. One last thing, and Keith, you and I have shared book topics back and forth, and often recommend books to each other. What's your number one recommendation right now for books for listeners that might be in the creative space or interested in what you're doing? What book would you recommend to them today?
Yeah, this is a book we had shared a conversation on before, which is Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, which is like a really it's kind of like you can just pick it up to any passage, or you can read it end to end if you want. I've kind of got it on my fireplace mantle, and I'll pull it off and just give it a skim every now and then, and kind of get into it. But it's kind of like how to build towards the idea of being creative every day and incorporating creativity in your life, and then leveraging those outputs, I guess, and staying true to it. It's a little bit more on the pure creative side, is the intrinsic versus extrinsic driven ideas, but I think there's a lot of little wisdom and nuggets and beautiful things in there. And if a few years ago I thought about writing a few, I do have on my checklist to write a few books myself, and we'll talk to our friend Aaron about that in the future. But this was one of the books I was like, I'm going to write a book on creativity, and all of a sudden Rick Rubin comes out with this masterpiece, and I don't have to do it anymore, and I couldn't do it, and so I couldn't do it to his level of quality, so why compete? So it's a different view on things, so it's really beautiful.
Yeah, wow. I think you bring a lot to the table of your own unique perspective on the world and your experience, so I think that's, I'll be the first one to read your book, But listen, I appreciate your time and taking part and being part of the Ignited podcast, and really enjoyed hearing your story and your insights. And we wish you all the best with And Good Company. And again, have fun with your young family. And I got a glimpse of your young fella earlier, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun with him, teaching him all about the good things in the world. So.
Yeah. Same with you. It's like I'd like to say it's all me, but it's not all me. It's all their tribe. It's all their people. It's all the individuals. And if you lived a little bit closer, I'd be like, come over here, give them some lessons, Doug. Give them some of your knowledge too, right? And so maybe that's what this whole experience is for, right? Even me paying it forward to those young professionals, and you know, and our little guy is once he lets me sleep at night, I think we're going to be in a good spot for helping mentor him a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Good
thank
stuff.
you.
Well, thanks again, and listen, enjoy the day, and we'll be talking very soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. Have a great day.
Cheers.